Hello, fellow adventurers. Welcome to Artistic Adventures. This is part 6 of our Hocus Pocus project. We're going to keep working on Witch Mary and finish her up today by completing her cape and doing her hairdo. So let's get started. All right, here's where we left her last week. And I do want to mention that little ring, somebody told me that it's called the Chatelaine ring. So she would keep the keys of the household on that ring. So I just wanted to mention that. All right. So today we're going to be working on this cape first. We're going to do that, and then we'll do the hair. So we're going to use this it's a little bit crinkly material. It's got some sort of lines through it, and it's sort of flowy, so I kind of like that. And I do want to make sure, though, that I have the lines going up and down on her body vertically instead of horizontally. So I'm going to lay this out and iron it just to make sure I've got all the wrinkles out of it with my handy dandy little iron. And just wanted to mention that I'm using just water here to spray on it. That just helps on some of these more stubborn places to get the wrinkle out. Just spray a little bit of water, and I'm really loving having that little spray bottle of water. I've used it for so many different things that I never really realized that I needed it for after I had it. So it's been really handy. I always have water in a glass that I use for painting and stuff like that handy, but I keep turning that over, so that bottle's a lot better idea. All right, so we're gonna lay the doll on here. So we want to mark her at her neckline, and then allow enough space on the side so that the length of the cape will be able to draw that half circle like we did on Sarah. So I'm just going to make a little ink mark here where her neckline is, and you'll notice I'm leaving a lot of material down at the bottom there because I want it to be able to flow out behind her. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same length as the skirt. I'll make it just a little bit longer. All right, so I'm going to use that neckline as the center and fold this in to a piece so that I can make a square, and then do my little thing where I make the half circle. If you see those little glasses, I'm working on a Harry Potter Blythe, and I have black hair from Harry Potter everywhere. It's driving me crazy. All right, so I'm cutting there right at the neckline across. So this is going to be a half circle. So I want to get enough material that I've got a basic square, and this will enable me to do my half circle. And I'm just trimming up there a little bit where it was uneven on one side so that all the edges are the same. And then I'm folding it with the pointy part it being the neckline, and then you see the shorter side of the triangle there is the length that I want. So I'm going to fold that over, and then we'll cut it at that length. That gives us a way to measure it. So you want to cut that sort of at a bow instead of straight across. You want it to be sort of arced over, and that will give you the shape of the half circle. So there's our half circle cape. I'm going to put it back together just so I can cut the neckline. I want to get it right at the center. And we're going to cut a little scoop out, and that will be the area where we'll do the neckline. So it doesn't have to be too big, probably about 1.5 inch size there. So when you open it up, it looks like that. And that's a little bit bigger than the neckline, but that's okay because we're going to do some things that sort of make that a little bit smaller. All right, so I still got my piece of aluminum foil that I had for Sarah, so I'm going to make use of it. I don't like to have to throw it away after I've made it bigger. I did piece 2 pieces together, so it's big enough. All right, so now we're going to put the fray check on, but before that I've got one little wrinkle here that I didn't get out, and I just sort of have my iron on. It does turn off, I think, after about an hour by itself, but I sort of set it back where it's not touching anything, that it would hurt, and I can keep it on that way if I need it. All right, so now we're going to just take fray check, your best friend when you're making small clothes, and put around the edges here. Now this fabric didn't really seem like it's going to fray too badly, but I'm going to just turn under one hem, so I think doing it this way will give it a little bit of structure, and because this is kind of flimsy fabric, and then also it will keep me from having to double it twice when I hem it, and that will make it a lot less bulky. So yay, fray check. Set that side to dry, and now we're going to cut out the hood and the collar, and I'm making this exactly the same way that I made Sarah's, not really changing it any for Mary. Just the fact that if I had been smart, I would have made a pattern of Sarah's. So, but you know, why not just eyeball it like I usually do? All right, so I'm just going to take this, keeping that grain of the material up and down, or that those lines, the crinkles are up and down instead vertically instead of horizontally, so they match the body of the cape. And then I'll fold over enough so that I can cut out the hood. And so basically I want to use a doll's head to measure. So this doll is going to be the next witch. And look at the cute little stockings I found her. I thought they were adorable. And they're exactly like the color that she had on in the movie. So I'm just sort of measuring, using her head, making this big hood, and making it so that it sort of arches over her head and comes in at the neckline. Doesn't really matter that I have that fold in the back. I'm going to sew over that anyway. So there's the hood. Although with her hair the way it is, I don't think it should be actually wearing the hood, but we want it to be there so it's authentic. I'm going to take the rest of this fabric that I have folded over and cut out a square, or well, it's really more of a rectangle, and use this for the collar. And I'm just going to do sort of a, not exactly half circle, but kind of that shape. And I just doubled it over at the point that I thought it would be about halfway, so I can make sure that I cut them symmetrically. Still loving these scissors though, by the way. So now I'm just going to cut another half circle kind of out, and that's going to be the neckline of the collar. And we're going to sew the collar and the hood to the body of the cape, but we have to do a little bit of work on them first. We're going to have to sew the collar together and turn it, and also sew the hood together and hem the edge that'll be opening around her face. All right, so here's the collar, and that's how that's going to work. I'll just go around her like that. That'll be right on top of the cape. And then the hood will fit on top of the collar. And that looks like it's going to be plenty big enough. All right, so now I think we'll take the cape, should be dry by now, and we're going to hem all the edges except the neckline all the way around. So I'm going to leave the neckline open because we'll be joining that with the collar and the hood. All right, so I take it over to the sewing machine, and with the magic of editing, it's immediately done. The hem is hemmed all the way around, and that fray check did work really nicely. Also, while I was off camera, I sewed the back of the hood, and now I forgot to do this before I sewed it, but I do need to put fray check on the front opening edges and the neckline, because those are pieces that I'm not going to hem. Well, I am going to hem, but I don't want to do more than one fold over for the hem. And the fray check seems to be working really well for that. So I just put fray check around the neckline and the opening and let that dry. And also I need to do the neckline, and I'm going to go ahead and just do the front edges, although I'm going to sew them of the collar. I'm not going to do the other edges just because this material is not fraying too badly. So I think it'll be okay. All right, so we're going to let those dry, and then we'll sew the edges of the collar and the hood, and then we're going to now attach them to the body of the cape. So we're going to take the hood. The first thing I want to do though is there's the neckline right there, and then the opening I hemmed so that it will have a nice finished look. But I want to go ahead and iron these just because they're not, when I'm folding them open, they're not really staying in the shape that I want them. Now this I've sewed all the way around the edges except for the neckline, and I'm going to turn it, and I'm also going to iron it as well so that it'll lay flat and look nice. Makes it a whole lot easier to sew it too. I just find when you have it ironed out like that, and that having that little iron handy is just so great. I love that little thing. I don't know how I got by without it. I'm using a little paintbrush to push the point of the collar out, and I do that on both sides. And then I'm going to get a piece of fabric out here so I can, makes it a little bit better to iron if you have something under it other than the table that is made out of plastic and could melt. So I'm just trying to get those seams folded all the way out so that I can iron them, and then they'll stay in shape. For some reason this doesn't want to turn out right. I guess it's because it's just sort of flimsy material. It does make a nice cape though, nice and flowy. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing with the hood, pull those seams out and then iron them down. And now we're ready to attach first the collar and then we'll do the hood. So we're going to match this up on the two sides because one is a little bit bigger than the other. So we're going to have to ease the material together. And let me get my pins out here, my little boot. And you start at each side. You're going to pin the two ends together where the cape meets the collar. And then we'll go over to the other side and pin that. So you can see the collar is just a little bit bigger, but that's okay. We're going to ease it together. And the way you do that is you take the part that's bigger, you take the center of that and match it up to the center of the other part, and you put a pin there, and then you just keep doing the same thing. You just keep going to the center and easing those folds, and then it ends up to where it doesn't look like it's even gathered. It looks like it fits. That's called easing in the sewing vernacular. So I knew that they didn't match exactly, but that's okay. I actually wanted the hood part to be a little bit smaller so that it will pull the collar and cape in a little bit at the neckline. So you just keep going to the center of your pins and spreading out the area that is a little too big so that it doesn't make a fold when you sew it, and it just sort of eases that fabric all together. And you'll see when I finish pinning here, it doesn't look like, there's any fullness at all. It just looks like they match perfectly. So we're going to do the same thing with the hood, but we're going to sew these two pieces first because the hood is also a little bit smaller than the opening of this neckline. So we're going to the sewing machine and magically sew that really quickly and come back, snip off our threads that we don't need. And I'm going to take these pins out, and I'm just going to leave them there because I'm going to reuse them with the hood. Alright, so we're going to take our hood and do the same thing, starting at each side. We're going to pin it. And I do spread that seam at the back of the hood open when I sew it. It seems to make it flow or fold just a little bit better when you do that. So open up that seam and pin the two sides down right in the middle. And then we'll use our easing technique to take up the fullness of the cape bottom and match it to the smaller size of the hood. And then hopefully this is going to work out great and fit around her neck perfectly. I'm going to use the same hook and eye technique to close it. If you didn't see the video on Witch Sarah where I did that in slow motion, You might want to watch that. I'm not going to repeat those steps on camera just because I've already done it. All right, so we're ready to sew the hood onto the cape, and that's done. Isn't that magical how fast I can sew? I love editing. All right, now when we take these pins out, because this is a rough edge and it's going to kind of show a little bit, I'm going to sew the edge down, and that'll keep it looking a little bit neater. But that's how it looks with the collar and the hood sewed on to the body of the cape. So just take that seam that we just made, and we're just going to fold it down. We're going to run a thread right across the top of it to hold it down, and that will give it a little bit more of a finished look. All right, so we did that, and now our cape is almost finished. But like I said, I am going to make the same hook and eye that I made, so I do still have to do that. So I'm going to try it on and make sure that it fits okay up at the top. And of course, you can't see that. Let me move the camera. There we go. So it looks good. Looks like it fits perfect. Yeah. She's really looking like Witch Mary. All right. So if you remember, for Sarah, we did that hook and eye. I'm going to use the exact same wire that I used for her. It's kind of a burgundy color. And I just went ahead and sewed those on off camera to save the boredom of doing that on camera. So we'll just hook that into the eye, and there's our finished costume. All right, now we have to do that crazy hairdo. So I thought about how to do this. I was going to try to use some black pipe cleaners to help shape the hair in that kind of weird arcing look that it has. Unfortunately, my picture doesn't have the whole hairdo, but it sort of goes up and then curves around at the top like a stovetop, crazy stovetop. So we got a couple things going on here. First of all, this hair is really thick. I'm going to have to thin it out, and then we have to come up with a way that will help us to mold it into that shape. So what I decided to do is to use just some black wire that I have so that it won't show very much with her hair. And I'm going to probably have to thin this out some. But before I do that, I'm going to use the wire to make kind of a 3-prong cage. I don't know what else to call it. And that's what I'm going to use to shape the hair. So it's going to have a round base that will fit around a section of the center of her hair. And then I'll have 3 pieces coming up from that. And I want 3 because I think I'm going to be doing this in 3 steps. I want to use that wire to wrap around each step where I twist the hair. So I'm going to need something to help hold it. So, I've never done this before. Like everything I tell you guys, I don't always know exactly what I'm doing. I just sort of visualize it, and it seems like it would work in my head, so I just start doing it. This is not some technique that I learned in, doll class or anything. Just, I guess, like engineering-wise, seems like it would work. So I've got that one loop, which is going to be 2 of the strips, and of twisting that wire together in a circle around the base, and I'm doing it so that those 3 lengths are going to be sort of evenly spaced around the circle that's going to go on top of her head. I'm going to cut that loop in a minute, so it'll be 2 pieces, but for right now I'm just winding that wire around the base so that it's secure and won't come loose. So that's going to be the 3 prongs. All right, so now I'm going to just cut the middle of that loop, and that's going to make 2 more of the strands. So we've got sort of like a crown, I guess, think of it. It's a round loop that's going to go on top of her head, and then these 3 pieces of wire that we're going to use to help us shape her hair. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is to section off a center piece of the hair that we'll put up through the middle of that circle. And when I do that, I'm also going to cut some of that hair out because the way her hair is shaped, it's like thick at the bottom and then it gets thinner at the top. And this is like thick all the way from bottom to top. So I'm going to cut some of the pieces out in the center of this section that I've pulled out. And then I think it will mold into that shape a little bit better. And I'm just making sure that I have enough around on the outside to pull up, and that will be more of the main shape of the lower part of the hairdo. I hope I'm explaining this right. Alright, so I'm going to sort of open that center section up and take some of the middle pieces and just snip those and cut them off. And I actually save those pieces, and I'll show you why a little later. I use them to help cover up some of the wire. So when you do this, if you're doing it the same way I am, just save those pieces to the side, and I ended up using them later because I had some areas where the wire showed and I didn't want that to show. Alright, so I've got that center section pulled up. We're going to take our cage and put down over that. First I did comb it out just a little bit. So I haven't done anything to it since we did the boiling technique on the curls. So this is really how it's been. I haven't really done anything else. Alright, so we've got that down through the center. And I'm going to take each wire. I think I twisted it once with all 3 wires just to get it sort of going in the right direction. Alright, and then I'm going to pull up those outer edges. And I'm just sort of, using my fingers to shape it, almost like, you're shaping clay. This hair is really, curly now, so it has a lot of body to it. It's a lot of volume to it. So I'm keeping that sort of twisted around in the center, and I'm pulling up the edges. I'm doing this on regular speed too, so you can see it, because this is kind of an odd thing to do, I guess. Now, the bottom part seems to be a little bit fluffed out. I don't want to pull it straight up, so I'm going to try to kind of comb a section there at the front and leave that looser so I can kind of mold that over to the side, and that will give it that fuller look. I do like the way this turned out though with the color. It actually turned out, I think, great with the purple and the black. It seems almost perfect for Mary's hair. So I'm taking that section right in front of her face, right over her face, sort of leaving that a little bit loose. Now I'm taking one of the wires and I'm using that to help me sort of cage in the bottom portion of the hairdo, and I'm twisting it around as I do that. Twisting the hair and then taking that wire kind of around on top of it. And that'll kind of hold that in place. And I just sort of am leaving that, see that front part there, I'm sort of leaving that loose. And that will, I think, be more like the fullness that is shown in the picture. And just pressing that down a little bit so get that poofy look. And now I'm going to take the second wire after I get this first wire pulled all the way around and really bending it in so that it'll hold the hair. So I'm stretching the hair up because she's got to have enough to come up to that point and then fold over. So I'm just going to keep twisting the hair in the same direction around clockwise on her head. And I'm trying to make sure that I have it so that it sort of looks natural, that it's going from a poofy area to a more pointed area up at the very top. So I want to have the middle part be a little less poofy than the bottom part. And I'm just going to use that second wire to help me do that. And I'm just twisting those curls around, and they kind of almost go into shape, because they're curled. They kind of just curl around, and you just kind of have to put that wire over top of them to help hold it in place. And then I'm stretching out the very top of the hair that I'm going to use with that last wire to form the area that comes to a point and then folds over on the top. So right now I'm using the second wire, I think. Yeah, second wire to do the middle part. And you can see it's sort of slowly coming into shape, magically, as if by magic. Some witchery going on here with this hair. I don't really know how this is going to turn out, but it's looking pretty good so far. And that the wire cage, it stayed in place, so that worked pretty good. All right, so now I'm twisting the wire around with the hair to get it into a more pointed shape. And then we'll be able to fold it over, and hopefully it'll be secure. So, yay! So that's kind of how it really looks, amazingly enough. And our hair's kind of messy looking, so you don't have to worry, like it's really, done perfectly and every hair's in place, because her hair doesn't look that way in the movie anyway. So, fortunately, that's good for us. Now I'm using some of the little pieces of the hair that I had left over. I want to put those across some areas where the black wire shows. So you can see I can just wrap that around there. And I'm going to use hairspray to hold it down. I'm not going to use glue. Believe it or not, I'm not going to use E6000 on this. But I want to get her hair nice and twisted so I see, exactly where I want to have the hair that I'm going to put on there placed, and make sure that it's twisted, around that wire really well and secure. Yay! Look at Mary's hair. That's so funny. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Oh boy. Can't believe this worked. All right, so you see, I hope you can see there where the shiny wires. I'm just putting the hairspray right on top of that. Putting the edge of that piece that I cut off on top of it. And any hairspray will do. I pick up these little travel sizes because they're easier to work with the dolls usually. And then I'm going to wrap that around on top of the other wire that was showing, and put some hairspray on top of that. And so that's really it for how to shape the hair. The rest of this is just me kind of going around using the hairspray to get some of the edge. There's a few hairs that are just kind of sticking up, and I want it to look a little bit smoother, so I'm putting hairspray on those edges. And after I get that part done, I'm going to just snip off. There's a lot of really loose hairs just sort of shooting off in all different directions. So I'm just going to go around and press those down if I can with the hairspray, and if not, then I'm just going to take my scissors and clip off the hairs that are just really sticking out and going nowhere. They just are crazy. And, that's kind of how that hairdo looks. It really actually worked. I'm so surprised. So there's our Mary. And I'm going to take some still pictures for you so you can see her costume a little bit better. But there's a good look at the hair and how that turned out. Turned out really nice. I mean, Nice in the sense that it looks like Mary's hair, not like it's a really great hairdo, but you know what I'm saying. All right, so there she is with her crazy hairdo and her shocked expression that she always did. And I got the cape draped over one of her arms, which is kind of how she is in the picture. And there's a little bit closer look, so you can see her face a little bit better and her hair. And I thought it'd be cute, like if we have her and Sarah together. So I did some shots of her and Sarah, like they're kind of looking for their other sister. Where is she? She should be here by now. We have spells to do. We have children to suck the life out of, or whatever it is that they did. So they keep looking for their sister. Where is she? Is she over there? So that means next week we start working on the last Sandra sister. And that will be very interesting. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thanks and bye.